In this video, we're going to be scraping the data from this website. I'm going to show you how the easiest way to get that information is. We're going to need to use some proxies, we're going to use a bit of logging, and we're also going to save everything in the end into our Mongodb hosted database, so all the data is kept there for us secure. So the first thing that we always want to do is have a look at the site and figure out where the data is and how we are going to get it. Now, I always do this to start with. I always go to the developer tools and I'll go to network. And what we'll do is we'll either reload the page, or in this case, the load more button. We'll start hitting that until we find what we're looking for. And we got this here right away. So I'm just going to make this full screen. We can see that we get this response here. Now what this is it's the API for the site, which is returning the data to the front end so it can populate and do all that stuff so we can see the pages. But we don't need to wait for it to do all of that to then scrape the data via HTML. We can basically mimic this request. We can make it ourselves, change a few of the parameters and get this information back here. Regardless of what I'm scraping, whenever I'm collecting data, I'm always using a proxy, and it's an important piece of scaling up any project. So I use PROXIES, who are kind enough to sponsor this video. We get access to high quality, secure, fast and ethically sourced proxies that cover residential, data center and mobile with rotating and sticky session options. There's 10 million plus proxies in the pool to use, all with unlimited concurrent sessions from countries all over the globe, enabling us to scrape quickly and efficiently. I use a variety of proxies depending on the situation, but I recommend you start out with residential ones. But make sure you select countries that are appropriate to the site you're trying to scrape and match your own country where possible. But to be fair, I've been having great success with the mobile proxies, and although I'm not using them in this project, I have used them a lot recently. Either way, it's still only one line of code to add to your project, and then we let PROXIES handle the rest. And also, any traffic you purchase is yours to use whenever you need, as it doesn't ever expire. So if this all sounds good to you, go ahead and check out PROXIES at the link in the description below. Now on with our project. If we scroll down a bit, here's the results. We can see, brand, price and stuff is all in here, price. All this cool information that we could be interested in if we were doing market research or something along those lines as well. So what I always do next is I go ahead and I look at the URL that's being created. Now this is a bit more interesting because you can see it's coming from this place. They're obviously using a third-party provider and we have some other information. So if I just copy this here and then paste this into my browser, hopefully we should see the information. There we go. So we got it back this way, so we know that that's going to work. The next thing to try is to copy the URL again and try using curl. We can see that that kind of did work. What do we get? Did we get some information? We did indeed get that information. That did work. So that's always good to know. It's always worth checking that to see if it's going to work for you. Sometimes you need to do a little bit more with the TLS, fingerprinting, etc., etc. But this seems to work for us. Nevertheless, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this as curl and I'm going to go to curl converter. This is all of this before we even think about writing any code. This is important. So we're in curl converter under Python and we can see it splits it all out for us and it takes all the headers and the parameters that we won't be interested in. So I'm going to copy this to clipboard and we're going to then go over to our shell here. I have two instances of my terminal running with tmux. I'm going to create a Python virtual environment, so .m.venv. I'm going to transition over to UV soon. I just haven't had a chance to look at it yet, so I'm also going to do this in my other side, so it's ready for me. Now I'm going to create a new file. We'll do touch main.py, and then I'm going to do pip install, and we're going to need a few things for this. I'm going to use plain request because I don't think I need to use anything else. We're going to use rich for printing and logging. I'm going to use pymongo to connect up to our Mongodb database, and I think that should be everything that we need so far. And now I'm going to go ahead and open up the main.py in my editor here, which I'm using Helix. Cool, so I'm going to save this, and then we're just going to print the response.json. I'm just doing some testing at the moment, and I'm going to do import from rich, import print, just so it prints a bit neater. And we're going to run this here and we should get the information that we want. We do by the looks of it. Let's go make this. I need to do scroll mode so I can scroll up. Yep, that looks about right to me. All this information, like pricing and stuff. Yeah, there's loads of information here. Okay, cool. Right, this is a full product somewhere here. Perfect. Right, so I know that this works and I'm happy with this. Let's go ahead and change some of this information. So if we look here, we've got page 2, for example, page 1. So I'm going to do to page 20. Let's try that. I'm also going to change this and I'm going to print out just a subsection of the response. So if I come back over to it here, go to the response, you see we've got pagination, then there's sorting, which I don't really need, and then there's results. So I'm going to be interested mostly in the pagination and the results. So let's just do pagination to start with and come back over and let's run this now. Cool. So we can see here that we have total results 1006, which actually exactly matches this here, which is good to know. And we can see we have current page, total page. So I know that this is working, and that's how I'm going to do the pagination through their API. No problems there. So we want to start thinking about how we're going to write this out. So I'm going to, let's go back to our code editor. Actually, we can just amend all of this as we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a function that's going to create the session for me. So I'm going to do create session, and this is going to take in, I don't think we need to give it anything, but let's put all of this inside, because what we're going to do is we're going to use this information to create our session. We don't need any of this now. We'll get rid of no, I do need to keep that around actually, because I need to know that URL, which is different. So let's just let's just comment this out actually to start with. Cool. So we want to create our session. So the first thing we want to do is make the session object. So we'll say our session is going to be equal to requests.session. So this is going to spawn that session for us. And then we want to think about adding in our proxy. So what I tend to do with my proxy is I keep it in an environment variable on my shell always, and I have a few different ones, so it's nice and easy to put in. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to say that our proxy is equal to os autoimport.getEnv. If you don't do it this way, you don't need to do all of this. You can just put it into your session as is, but because mine comes from my environment variables, I'm going to be doing this. So let's just call the standard proxy from ProxyScrape that I use. I'll just say if proxy is none, I'm going to raise an exception here, and I'll just say no proxy found. That means if it doesn't find the proxy in my environment, it won't actually carry on, the program will terminate. I do else, and then I'm going to say that our proxies, this is what's going to be put into our session, is equal to HTTP and then proxy, I think is what we need here, like so. So now I've created this dictionary. I'm going to move the parameters down actually, because these are going to go somewhere else. I think we'll put them somewhere else. What we want now is we want to do our session.update, headers.update. There we go. So we can put the headers in here, and then we can do session.proxies, update the proxies to our proxies variable there. Right. So essentially all we're doing is we're basically making sure our proxy's there, getting it right, taking the headers that we're going to need from the site, and then creating that session. So I can now return this session object out of this function, and it's done everything for me. So anytime I want to call any request now to this URL, I can just use this session that I've used from this create session function. I've started doing this a little bit more. I think it's kind of handy to manage your session like this, to just create it rather than, you know, messing around, not being able to, or having to add things in different places, or just having your session as a global thing. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create an init function, I think, for my MongoDB. Actually, let's just put logging in whilst we're here. I'm trying to make a bit more of a habit doing this rather than just using random print statements everywhere, because if you use, I don't need this print, if you use, when you host this anyway, you're much better off having an actual sort of logging format rather than just random print statements and saving those to a file. It's just much neater and easier to read and understand, and I always just use the rich handler. I don't know, it makes it a lot easier to see. Let's put this at info to start with. So let's do our database next. Again, if you're not saving the stuff to a database, you can skip this part, but you'll need to do something with the actual data that you're pulling out. This is getting a little bit messy for my liking, so I'm going to remove this. I've got this all on the curl converter still. That's a bit neater. No, I can see what I'm working with now. Cool. So let's go ahead and define a new function, and we'll call this one initialize db. Put this in the middle of the screen. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to say that my Mongo string is coming from my environment, os.getEnv. If you don't do this, you can just you can just skip this step and put the string directly into the PyMongo client. Make sure that if you look at the documentation, it's really easy to use the PyMongo client. So I'll leave that somewhere, or you can just find it, and we'll do from PyMongo is import Mongo client. There we go. Cool. So basically, my MongoDB database that I'm going to be using is hosted, managed on DigitalOcean. I find it easier and just more reliable to do that than I could, of course, do it locally, which I have done. I do have a home server. If I keep it on DigitalOcean, it's all nice and secure. It's backed up, and also I can access it from anywhere, which I don't want to do with my home server. So I'm doing that. It costs a few dollars a month. It's not a big deal. Right, so I'm going to do again, if our Mongo string is none, we need to raise an exception. No Mongo instance string found. Cool. Right. So if you're not doing it from your environment, you don't need to do this. You can just do it here, and you can say your client is going to be equal to the Mongo client, and you can just put it straight into here. But I'm going to obviously use the one that I pulled from my environment. And I'm going to say that my DB is equal to client. Wow, am I typing? And I have it as e-commerce. This is where I store my e-com data, and I want a collection is going to be equal to let's just call this fish YouTube, like so, and I'm going to return the collection out of this function. So when I call this function at the start of my main function, which we're about to create, I'm now going to have a collection object that I can use to push stuff into my Mongo database as needed. And likewise, I will have a session object that I can use when I want to query the website. So we've done quite a lot of setup here. I'll be putting timestamps in the video, but we've done quite a lot of setup. But this is worth it, because otherwise you're just going to end up with part of you're going to have data that you can't do anything with, or you're trying to export in different ways, and you might need to just change parts of your function, so you might end up rewriting. We're going to leave it like this for the moment, and we should be able to get going. So now I'm going to create another function. I'm going to call this API request, and this is going to take in our session. Let's put this in the middle of the screen, which is going to be a instance of the requests.session, like so. We're also going to take in a URL. We're going to pass in the URL to this, just in case that ever changes. And then we're also going to take in a page number, because as we remember when we looked at it to start with, there was that page thing that we could put in. I think we'll leave this as an integer for the moment. And let's start creating this. So I'm going to need the parameters from here. Let's copy these again and put them in. Cool. Now I'm going to start removing some of these. I don't think we need all of them. Well, first of all, we need to change this one to our page. There we go. And I'm going to turn this into a string here, because as you can see, it was a string beforehand rather than an integer. I'd rather convert it to a string here rather than do it at the beginning, because I want it to be, just pass in a number into this function as an integer. So it's a bit more controlled. We also have this category here, which we'll be able to change at any point that we want to. I don't think we're going to need these. I will leave them there for the moment and then try it once we get going to see if we do. All right, so all of this build up just to make one simple request. So let's go and do that. Our response is equal to the session. Again, put this in the middle, .get. And we want to make the URL and the parameters that are coming in from this dictionary. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do log.info, the response.status code, and we'll just put something here actually. You just call it response status, and let's make this an F string. Should be fine. And let's just print out the response.json for the moment, because what I want to do is I want to push all of the response information into a Pydantic model, just so it's easier to manage it. And I do this quite a lot, and I'll talk about it when I get going, but basically I just do JSON to Pydantic, get everything, create all the models, just remove the stuff that I don't need, and just bung the whole response into there, and then just turn it back into whatever I want. Just saves me time. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our main function now. Main. So the first thing we want to do is have our session, which is going to be equal to the create session function, and then our collection is going to be equal to our initialize database function. Cool. I need to grab the URL, which was this here. Grab you, and we'll just say URL is equal to this. I don't need the double quotes. Get rid of them. What I'm going to do first, because we do have this response that had, do I still have it? Yeah, here. Because we have this, we can actually make one request to start with and then figure out our pagination from here. So we can see we have total pages of 32. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say we'll call this total pages, and that's going to be equal to our API request of the session. This is the first one we need to pass in. Our URL, and what else did we need to put in? I forget now. Go definition. Oh, our page number. So we'll do page number 1, and then we will. Then we have access to the total number of pages. So I could do something like print total pages, and this is going to be, I think it's called pagination. Let's find out. Pagination and then total pages. Cool. And what we'll do is we will do this, and I just need to change this. I've decided to do this slightly differently, so I'm going to return our response.json here. Yes. Cool. And we'll just do for x in range 1 to total pages plus 1, and we'll print our x. And now I'm going to do if name equal to main, run the main function. Okay, so we've written quite a lot just there. I decided to return the response out of here, just make this function do one thing. Hey, get the request with all the information that I need it to be got with, and then calling the total pages here from the first page of pagination. So we're going to have to make one extra request, but it's going to mean that we know exactly how many pages there are, so we don't have to worry, and we can just do that. Right, so I'm going to save this, I'm going to clear this up, and I'm going to run it again. So we should now be total pages, dict, and int. Right, cool. So I've done something wrong. Printing the wrong thing. There we go. So now we have our total pages, and then we should be able to do our total pages on here now instead of just that, because I was printing the wrong thing because it's not very smart, and that was never closed. We get there in the end. There we go, 32. Right. So now we can have this as we'll call this one pages, and we'll call this total pages. We'll call this one something else. What should we call this? Total pages, and let's just call this one pages response. So it kind of makes a bit more sense, maybe. I don't know. I've lost it a little bit here. There we go. Right. Now I can do this, and we can have pages plus 1, stick that in there, and now what should have happened the first time, we get 1 to 32. So now I really want to think about the response that I'm going to get, because I really want to put this into a model. I don't really want to be messing around with JSON, although you absolutely could do that if you wanted to. So I'm going to go ahead and go to JSON to Pydantic. So it's just I think this is just a good practice to use something like this. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it doesn't make sense, but for me it kind of does. So there's, you get the dot notation and you don't have to worry. It doesn't really take much time up. So let's do not kbob. Let's create a models file. And we'll dump this in here. And we just need to do pip3 install Pydantic. Cool, right. So we should have this models thing here now. I need to reset my editor. Great. So I don't need a lot of this stuff. So what I'm actually going to do is we'll change this to item. No, this is going to be the full response. So this is going to be our JSON response model. I don't want sorting. I don't want the layout. I do want the list of results. I don't want any of that though. So you can see I'm just removing from here what I don't need, and delete it from here eventually. And we'll just figure out if there's any stuff in the response here that could cause us problems. Is there anything we don't really want anyway? I don't know what any of this is. Let's get rid of this. Keep it a bit more simple to start with. We'll remove these ones as well. We'll just leave it like that. We'll leave it like that. We'll keep some basic information. It's up to you. You can play around and decide whatever it is that you do or don't want. So let's go back to our main file, main, and we're going to do from models. We're going to import in our JSON response model. And now what we can do, instead of returning out of here our response.json, we can do something like try, and we'll try to return our JSON response model with unpacking the whole JSON response into it like so. If this fails, we'll just handle it with except. This will be a validation error, if anything. Validation error as log.info error, and then we'll just return blank JSON response model. I don't know if this is a good idea actually. We'll see. Because what I wanted to do was put on here this to return, always to return this type like that. So I want to make these optional. Down here, let's say that this is now optional. So we could potentially have a response that doesn't have these in. I mean, it's perfectly acceptable to think that, right? So now we are getting this out here. This is going to be equal to a response instead. So now we can call our dot notation. We can say pagination, or not that, keep doing that. Pagination, and we want the total results +1. And then we can do for, we can say, we need to handle this because this could be, it could be none. So all we need to do now is we'll say if pagination that should be fine. If that's none, we want to do, let's raise an exception. Raise, I'm not going to handle these, I'm just going to raise them. No pages found. Okay, so we got that handled. So now instead of just printing this, we can do something like response is equal to our API request. We can now pass in the session, the URL, and X as the page. And now we want to do if response.results is none, because it could be nothing, then we want to log.info no results on page, else what we're going to do is let's just print out the results for the moment. For this is just temporary. In response dot results. We'll just print out I, and we'll figure everything else out in a minute because we're going to be using this in a little bit. So that should be fine. Right. Okay, let's try running this now. See what we get to. Okay, validation errors. Set ID. Okay, this is the downside, but you'd have to handle this anyway. Set ID. Oh. So I mean, if you didn't have this in your, this isn't in the. This is missing data, so we need to handle this somehow. We'll do equals. We'll just equals none here. Cool, so we are getting data back. We'll just let this run for a little minute, see if we pick up any more validation errors. The good thing about running with, pulling the JSON out like this is it shouldn't have many errors because it should have information in there. Let's just let's log out here our response dot pagination as well as we go, and we'll print out I, and we'll just print out the name. This is why having something like Pydantic is really useful. So we should just get the names coming through, and we can see we're not actually stopping when we get to the total pages mark. So I missed something in here. I've done total results rather than total pages, which is why it was carrying on. So we're going to go all the way up to 1,000 pages. So right, let's just try and make sure it stops this time. We should stop on page 32. Total pages, current page, we did. Great. All right, that's that resolved. Right. So now that I know that this is working, what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and just put this data into our Mongodb database. And that's really, really easy as well. So I'm going to print out the name, and then I can just do my collection, which I need to uncomment here. So I can do collection dot. Now I want to do is replace one, because what you do with this is if you go and try to if you want to update it as such, because of the way that the data is, it's much easier for us to just replace the whole thing. If we have it already, just replace the whole document, and if it doesn't exist, it will create it. So that's essentially what it's going to do. So I'll say our ID, and that will be item or i.id in this case. So we're just going to look for that ID, and if it finds it, it will do i.model dump. And we want upsert is equal to true. So this is what's going to basically, it's going to say, it's going to look for this, it's going to search for this query in the database, the ID, which is going to come off of the product. If it finds it, it's going to replace it with the new information. And if it doesn't find it, it's going to create it. So that's one line just to add that document to Mongo, which is one of the reasons why I like it so much. I know the downsides versus SQL, and for actual web applications, I would always use Postgres. But for things like this, where I just want to have somewhere to hold the data, I quite like Mongo. Right, so that's going to do that for us. I don't think I need to do anything else. So what we're going to do is just try running it now. We should get a load of information here. I need to turn that print into a log, so I can see that, so it looks better. So we can just see it all zipping through and going by. Cool, so that seems to added it. So we'll just change this whilst I'm here. Log.info. And I think this will need to be a f string for logging purposes. So we'll just say found and adding i.name. Super. So now I'm going to open up my MongoDB compass, which is going to just give an easy way of seeing everything. Here it is. Here's the collection I made, and we have 105 results, which is interesting. I should be 106, so I've obviously done something that's missed somewhere. But we can see, here we go. It's all the information that we pulled out. Categories, hierarchy, this could be quite useful. Brand, price, popularity. This is all sorts of information that you would be interested in if you were doing market research, or maybe you wanted to open up your own store selling something like this. You might want to figure out what's going on out there already. So the final thing that I want to do is just show you how we can change the parameters to pick up different parts of the store. So we don't need that anymore, don't need that, don't need any of that. So I'm in rods and reels, so let's just open up this one instead. Just go here, and we could just see that it should be the keyword that we need. So I'm just going to replace that with that. Now again, this is a different category, so we may find that some of our validation is going to cause us issues, but we'll see. It will just tell us, and we'll figure it out from there. If you had lots of validation issues, you might miss out on quite a few products, so you just need to kind of have a look through and work out. I think I've only seen one go by at the moment. Basically anything that doesn't validate at the moment I'm just skipping, so you probably want to do something better with that, maybe like just add part of the information or put it to a different table and say this doesn't have complete information or something like that. So we're going through here in a moment. What page are we up to? I can't see it. It won't let me edit it. Cool, so that's finished. We went through 67 pages on there, 2,141. So we were doing, total pages so far, apart from when I was figuring this out, is 99 total pages is all we've been through to get all of this information. Again, all this information free and open on the internet, available for me to extract. You could go through this website one by one and do it manually by hand. I'm just doing it automated. So let's have a quick look at our database. Now we have 3,081, so we did have some validation errors. We should have had a little bit more than that. So that would be something worth looking into. And just quickly, let's have a look at some more of the information. Let's just go down a few pages. Have another look here. Yeah, cool. So we got all this information. You could write queries against this to pull information out, but yeah, whatever you need to do, I'm just storing this, for the sake of this video in this instance. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. This is probably the most easy and most common way to scrape data from sites like this. There are much more challenging ones out there. There are easier ones as well. So just bear in mind that to be good at web scraping, you need to know lots of different methods and put them all together when you need them, and understanding how things block you, etc, etc. I've got loads of web scraping videos on my channel already. If you're interested in learning more about that, then definitely subscribe and check out some more of my content. I think you will find it interesting. If you want to watch me do this again, but in a slightly different way, where more complicated methods were required, then I'll leave a video right here that you can go and watch next and continue on my amazing YouTube session time. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you in the next one.